So, In a Violent Nature is a horror film directed by Chris Nash, and I did not get a chance to see it in theaters, but it did just drop on streaming. I checked it out today, and I gotta talk to you guys about it because of a couple of reasons. One is a lot of people were asking me if I was gonna review it when it came out in theaters. I just did not have a chance to go see it. And I think a lot of you guys know that follow my channel that I am a huge diehard fan of the slasher genre. I would say besides like monster movies like Alien, The Thing, and that kind of stuff, I'd say the slasher genre is certainly my favorite overall genre of horror. I've covered the Friday the 13th films, Halloween, Child's Play, Nightmare on Elm Street, all that stuff I've talked about on the channel. I'm a huge fan of like Sleepaway Camp and things like that too. So, I love all of it. I love the actual, artistic, good, well thought out and well planned, great character kind of slasher movies. And then I also love the absolute ridiculous, over the top, just stereotypical characters, nothing but just people getting naked and people getting slaughtered. I love that kind of stuff too. So when it comes to In a Violent Nature, this was getting hyped up for one big specific reason, which is the core concept of this movie, in that it takes place entirely in the perspective of the killer. You are dealing with a scenario here that is very, very reminiscent to Friday the 13th. If the Friday the 13th IP were available, I have no doubt in my mind that they would have probably just made this a Friday the 13th movie. It plays on many of the cliches and tropes, and the setting itself taking place in the middle of the woods around a lake with a big, strong, hulking, resurrected killer. Pretty much Friday the 13th DNA in every little aspect of this movie. And I would say maybe one of the main reasons why people don't like slasher movies is because they do tend to be very formulaic. So this movie comes along and decides to give us a slasher movie from the complete opposite perspective of what we're used to. What we're used to is getting to know a bunch of main characters, usually young characters, young teenage characters, or young adult characters. We get to hang out with them a while. We get to see what their situation is. We get to know their relationships. We get to see them hang out, we get to see them party, have fun, have sex with each other, and then we see them slowly killed off one by one, building the tension, not knowing when the next kill is going to happen, which characters are going to be killed, in what order they're going to be killed, all leading us towards our final girl character, usually being the lead protagonist at the end, facing the killer one-on-one, putting him to rest or killing him off until the next sequel. That's generally the formula of most slasher movies. This one decides to take itself in the opposite direction, and instead we are following our killer character the entire film. Now, this is an interesting concept, and it's definitely very intriguing, and it's something that would probably make you want to go out and watch this movie, and I'm sure that's the reason why a lot of people did. Like, how do you do it? How do you do a slasher film where you focus on the killer the entire time, especially when you have a killer that is pretty much a Jason Voorhees clone, where he is just a strong, tall, lumbering character that does not speak? So how do you make that interesting, You don't. I think sometimes also there is a reason why particular formulas work within their genre. And when you stray a little bit too far from that formula, maybe not. So here's kind of how I feel about this. On the one hand, I do appreciate the creativity. And I also know that this is a first-time director. Well, not a first-time director, but this is his first full feature-length film, I'm pretty sure. And as somebody myself that wants to be able to make movies someday and would love to make a horror movie, I'm not going to shit on anybody's idea. This is an interesting idea. It's an interesting take on the slasher genre, and I'm glad that he got to make the movie the way that he wanted to. But I am going to review the movie based upon my experience with it and my tastes. And personally, this really did not work for me for many, many different reasons, and I will get into why. I think primarily it's because this would work way better for me as maybe a 15 to 20 minute short film. And I'm sure that that's been discussed before, and I'm sure other people have talked about that. I'm just getting a chance to see the movie now, like 2 months after it came out. So I'm sure this movie's already been discussed to death, and I'm way late to the party. But while watching this, I think I could definitely enjoy this if it were a very, very short, if it was a short film. If it was like 15 minutes, 20 minutes, you see the killer get resurrected, you see him go, you see him walk through the woods, you see him get the first kill scene, go to the kids, do the next couple kills. I think that if you slim that down into a nice, tight, cohesive 20 minutes, I think it could be pretty enjoyable for some kind of internet video, right? But watching a full hour and a half of this movie where probably 70% of the film is literally just watching the killer walk through the woods. I called this movie a slasher ASMR. It almost tries to take the approach of watching a slasher in real time. There are definitely skips in moments, like we'll cut to nighttime or we'll cut to the next morning or something like that, but most of this movie is pretty much just in real time watching somebody walk. You're watching him walk through the woods during the day. You're watching him walk through the woods during the nighttime.
These were boring as hell. All it was a bunch of people walking.
And what is happening while he's walking through the woods? Well, the camera is behind him, so it pretty much just looks like a video game character that you are. If you were like bored playing GTA and you just sit back and you just like hit the directional thing and your character just walks slowly and you're just kind of like watching him walk. That's pretty much what this was. There is also no music and no score, which is a deliberate choice done during this film. So the only thing you are hearing are footsteps, twigs cracking, birds chirping. It's pretty much as if you just went through a walk in the woods. So if you want to get that feeling, if you want to get that ASMR of somebody walking through the woods, this movie will give that to you, and it will give it to you tenfold, because that is the majority of this movie, is a guy walking through the woods, and you just hear the sounds of nature. Maybe it'll be good for some people. Maybe somebody will put it on. You know how they have those like ambient videos that you can watch on YouTube? It's like 8 hours of listening to the rain. You know, sometimes I'll put that on to go to sleep. You might be able to just put this movie on and go to sleep if you want some sounds of nature. It's just every 15 minutes or so, there's going to be a bunch of screaming and blood squirting, but then it's going to go right back to nature. So what is the actual story of the movie, if there is one? Essentially, you have pretty much a Jason Voorhees clone. There is lore and backstory given early on in the movie, which when it happens, I actually really, really hate the way that they did it. The opening of the movie I thought was actually okay, because they pretty much showed the resting spot of the main character, and he has this gold watch that was his mother's. So again, Jason kind of clone, like being attached to his mom. And somebody takes the watch away from the resting area, which resurrects him. He comes out of the ground and he starts walking around, and that's pretty much your first 10 minutes. By the way, they cut away from the first kill in this movie, minor spoiler alert, and that annoyed the hell out of me, because you spend about the first 10 to 15 minutes just watching him resurrect and walk to the first person, and then when it finally gets to what would be the first kill scene, it cuts away. You don't get to see it. What the fuck? But I hate the way that the exposition is given, because after we experience all of that time just following this character, I believe his name is Johnny, just following him walk, then we cut to the kids at the campfire that he's watching, and the camera just spins around the campfire the entire time they're having the conversation. Like, there's no, I don't know how to explain it. There's no establishing shot of any of the characters. We get to them, and the camera just circles them for, again, like another 5 minutes as they're explaining the lore backstory of this local legend. You don't get to know any of the characters, and it's even kind of hard to recognize them, because the scene is in the middle of the night and it's only lit by campfire. So once you actually start to see the characters start to die, I don't even remember who was who during the campfire scene, because I could barely see any of them. And that's really the only time there is ever dialogue or conversation in this movie, is when the killer is walking and stalking somebody, and he gets close enough to where you can hear their conversation, and he'll stand there and watch, you know, kind of like we've seen Jason or Michael Myers or somebody stand ominously in the background watching a character talk. Well, you'll get that a little bit, and then he'll go in for the kill. The kill scenes, which people are also talking about, are very graphic, very brutal, lots of gore, but I don't think I feel as wondrous about them as other people do. A lot of people are saying, dude, the kill scenes in this movie are crazy, like it's worth it for the kill scenes. The kill scenes they're good, but like if you've watched a ton of slasher movies, I don't feel like the kill scenes in this movie are like that particularly stand out, other than maybe the yoga kill, which people are talking about, and it's good, but like, I'm not going to take that away from the movie. Like, that kill scene is good, but I don't think it redeems the rest of the movie. And I don't think it's so good that I'm like, oh my God, you have to see it for this kill scene. It's pretty good. The gore is good. I think the best part of it is after he kills the character and she falls down the hill, there's this big wide shot of the hillside where he's kind of standing on the hill, and you watch the body just like roll down the hill. To me, that was the best scene in the movie, because that just made me laugh. It wasn't the kill, it was just the body. You see it from like a really, really far distance away, and the body's just this little tiny thing on the screen. Just that was funny to me. There's also scenes where the killer just kind of stands there, where he's not even just walking around, like he'll just stand on the hillside. Or he'll find something on the ground and he'll sit down and he'll look at it. It reminds me of when I'm walking in the woods and I find a really cool rock. I'll just sit down and stare at it for like 2 minutes. That happens in this movie. But there is nothing to latch onto here. There is no character to latch onto. And before anybody says, oh, it's a slasher movie, we're not supposed to have great characters, that is a fallacy, my friend. There are plenty of amazing characters in slasher films. Nancy from Nightmare on Elm Street, Sidney from Scream, Laurie Strode's development over the course of a couple Halloween films, Jamie Lloyd in the Halloween films. You could go on and on. Andy and Nika from the Child's Play franchise. There are tons of great characters in slasher films. So I don't want to hear that. All right. Obviously, there's a lot of stupid, dumb characters that we love to see get killed off. Ginny from Friday the 13th Part 2 is a great character. There's plenty of them, but there's none of them in this movie. And you don't get to see them only from the killer's perspective until the very end, which I'll talk about in the, I guess, spoiler section. How do you spoil a movie like this? It's pretty much exactly what it sounds like. Anyways, you don't get to latch onto any character. So not only do you not care about any character's death, which could be standard for a slasher movie, but you don't even get a semblance of anybody's personality. Like you don't really get to know anybody. And that's why I think the ending also kind of falls apart. But all right, I'll get to that in the spoilers. So again, I appreciate the idea, but here's the general gist, is that most of this movie is a character walking, and it just, I'm sorry, doesn't work for me. It just becomes boring. The kill scenes are good enough, but I don't think they're good enough that they warrant sitting through the entire movie maybe more than once. Maybe just watch a compilation of the kill scenes, right? And the killer himself, the slasher, the lore, the backstory, it's almost kind of done in a way where it feels like you should already know the lore. Like there's a couple of characters in the movie that kind of knew who he was, and it kind of feels like we're already knee deep within a franchise, even though it's the first movie, but it also just is kind of playing off your reliance of knowing the Friday the 13th movies, because even though this isn't Jason, it's just very, very similar, very, very reminiscent. The weapons he uses are kind of like this hook and chain thing, which I guess is unique and different. His mask is like an old firefighter mask. It kind of looks kind of silly, actually. It kind of looks a little bit goofy. I don't know. Didn't work for me. And that's this movie. That's the entire movie. Walking, couple kill scenes, and then an ending that I'll get into in the spoilers. So if that sounds like something you would enjoy, go ahead and check it out. It's a worthy experiment, but it just does not work for me whatsoever. This is not a movie I'm going to go back to. If you like the sounds of footsteps, if you're a Foley artist, if anybody knows what that is, if you're a Foley artist, you might actually enjoy this movie, because most of this movie is just sound effects. All right, so I'm going to get into spoilers. I'm going to talk about the ending. So if you haven't seen it or you care about spoilers, that's the end of that part of the review. So spoiler ending. So pretty much what you find out is that the character was a young boy that was tricked to go up to the top of this fire tower to be scared. He fell off. He died. This watch from his mom is what's really important to him, and that's what was at his resting site that caused him to resurrect. Weird thing, though, in the beginning of the movie, there's a scene where he goes into a house, and in the reflection of the mirror, you see a flashback of his father. And I thought this was going to be a running theme through the whole movie, that he would be hearing his father's voice, or maybe his father would play the narrative of the film so that we could get kind of like an exposition or like a narrator, even though our main character, our killer, doesn't speak. But nope, only happens one time, never brought up again. So, all right, something I thought would have been cool. You know how Jason hears the voice of his mom? I thought it would have been cool if you had the father figure kind of giving him instruction or talking to him throughout the course of the movie. Doesn't happen. Then when we get to the finale of the movie, there's two characters left alive that are a couple. I think they're a couple. The guy gets killed in a hilariously over the top, like he's just getting axed over and over. The girl runs away. And at this point in the movie, I was like, oh, it's got to be almost over, right? So I checked, and there were still 20 goddamn minutes left of this movie. 20 fucking minutes left. And I was like, what are they going to do for 20 more minutes? Well, about 5 of those minutes is shifting perspective over to, I guess, the final girl. I don't even know the character's name, but she's the last survivor, so I guess technically the movie does have a final girl. We follow her running and running and running and running and running and running, and nighttime turns back into day. The sun rises, and she runs some more, and she winds up on the street, just as we see lots of slasher movies end. Original Texas Chainsaw kind of ends this way. She gets picked up by a passing driver, which is this old woman who actually found out the actress that plays her was actually in the original Friday the 13th Part 2. And I always thought she was like the cutest character in that one, but it has been like 45 years, so I'm, nothing wrong there. She's old now, but that's okay. Anyways, she picks her up. She picks up the final girl, and the last 10 minutes of this movie are this long monologue that this old woman gives about somebody she knows that was being attacked by a bear, or basically, I guess trying to explain thematically the nature of like a violent animal, and just like how it's inexplainable or in a violent nature, right? It's basically referencing our main killer to that of a wild animal, that of a bear. There's really no explanation. There's no reasoning. It's just, you disrupt something and they kill out. They lash out and they kill you in a violent nature. Pretty spot on, but the monologue goes on forever. And after you just watched about an hour and 15 minutes of pretty much no dialogue whatsoever, just complete silence, just complete sounds of nature with the occasional screaming, and maybe like 50 lines of dialogue in total, the entire film, you get this extended long monologue, and it just is like this shift to your system, which I guess maybe was the point. But oh my God, it was so fucking boring. I was going out of my mind. I don't know. The movie itself is fucking boring, but that particular moment was just like took the cake. I was like, can we cut back to the dude walking? I kind of miss it now. And it's also even worse because the entire time, perhaps maybe this subverts expectations and someone is going to say it's brilliant because of that. I don't know. But you're expecting the entire time for her to be in on it, or for another kill or another jump to happen. But it doesn't. It doesn't. She gets out, she tends to the main character's wounds, and the movie ends. So essentially the last 15 minutes of this movie is maybe is meant to have you filled with tension, waiting for the kills to start up again, and they don't. But the problem is that there is no tension in the entire movie. I never felt like one semblance of tension because you see it from the killer's perspective. So shifting to the final girl in the last 15 minutes and expecting there to be tension doesn't work. It doesn't happen. I don't even know who this character is. I don't have tension because I care about this character. The only tension I have is coming from the fact that I am listening to this like 5 minute long, 10 minute long maybe monologue that I don't give any semblance of a shit about, that could have been summed up pretty much in a couple of lines of dialogue. I'm not scared for anybody in this scene. And if anything, maybe the tension is supposed to come from thinking that the woman is going to be in on it. Like I said, I kind of thought she was. But that really only comes from not the tension of this movie, but just from being aware of horror slasher cliches. That's the only reason I thought she might have been in on it, or she might have been a killer as well, or she might know the killer, that sort of thing. It's just from the standard watching a lot of slasher movies. And perhaps that was the intent. Perhaps he's trying to just basically say, hey, I've seen a shit ton of slasher movies too, so everything you expect from a slasher movie, I'm going to do the opposite. You expect to see it from the victim's perspective? No, I'm going to do it from the killer's perspective. You expect the final kill scene? I'm not going to do a final kill scene. Maybe that's it, and maybe that's the point. And if that is the point, fine, I guess it works. But for me, I just found this movie to be a slog. I just found it to be absolutely boring. And I don't think that the kill scenes, though there are a few good ones, were good enough to propel it up any further than that. That being said, I do appreciate the director's effort and I do appreciate the creativity. I like when people do things that are a little bit different, or just try something outside the box. But sometimes when you do that, it doesn't work. And it doesn't work for me here. I'm sure it does work for other people, and that's great. And if you guys love the movie, that's fantastic. But for me, I just was bored out of my mind. And I don't know what I was expecting. And I also feel like there's a few other ways that you could have done this to, I guess, maybe enhance the experience. Maybe it could have been done with the shots and editing themselves instead of doing the entire thing over the shoulder of the killer. Maybe have some different angles. You know what I mean? Like maybe show it from a different point of view. Like, does it have to be like a video game first person over his shoulder the entire time? Maybe you could have seen him in different locations in a different way, or done some different editing rather than just like, I usually like long takes, but this is not the kind of long takes that I enjoy. Maybe doing something differently that way. Maybe even getting to know our characters. If you had the killer show up as what happens a couple of times where he shows up and characters are in mid-conversation, maybe you could have played out the storyline that way and we could have seen it through his perspective still, but at the same time gotten to know some of the human characters. But that doesn't happen. And I know it's obviously an artistic choice not to have any music in the movie because there's no music in the entire film that I remember at all. But I really think that particular scenes maybe could have benefited from a score. Or maybe you could have had a very signature score. We're doing this kind of like play on a slasher a movie. So, Michael Myers has his own score. Jason has the kill, kill, kill. Maybe we could have come up with something signature to this character to help kind of carry us through those scenes of the stalking. But there's not. So even the things that I think could have worked about this concept for me personally are not there. Like I said, maybe having his, father as like a narrator or something. Different things that I think could have enhanced the experience for me are not here. So overall, didn't work for me. Not really a fan. Also, it's a slasher movie. It's playing on Friday the 13th. There were no boobs in the movie. Well, actually, that might not be true. There was one girl that I think was swimming in the lake without her shirt on. But, I don't get to see it because it's kind of far away. And then he kills her underwater. I'm just saying, show me some boobs in this movie and then maybe I'll increase my score. Anyways, guys, if you guys have seen In a Violent Nature, let me know what you think about it down below. I figured I would review it anyways because it has been talked about quite a bit. Some people have specifically asked me about it, so now you have a full review. But beyond that, leave all your thoughts, ideas, and opinions down below. Thanks for watching, guys. I appreciate you checking it out. Give the video a like and a comment to help it out in the algorithm. And if you're new here, I do lots of horror reviews, movie reviews in general, big, long retrospectives. I also talk a lot about anime, manga, comic books, and that kind of stuff. So if you like that kind of shit, go ahead and subscribe. If not, it's okay. I don't mind. Anyways, guys, thanks for watching. I'll talk to you next time.